Well, good evening. Diane Young here on behalf of South Pacific Private Hospital, and tonight we're talking about anxiety. And before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that we are here today on the land of the Gayamagal people, part of the Eora Nation. The Gayamagal are traditional owners and custodians of this saltwater land, and are part of the oldest surviving continuous culture in the world. We pay our respects to the elders past, present and emerging. So as people are settling in and coming into this session, big topic, understanding anxiety, and we're going to talk about tools for everyday calm. It's the Mental Health Awareness Month, and so it's very apt to be talking about this today. So anxiety is something that many people experience, and it often goes unspoken or misunderstood, and many people who have it feel like they shouldn't have it and they don't want to talk about it. It can quietly shape how we think and feel and relate to others. Sometimes leaves us feeling tense, overwhelmed or stuck in a cycle of worry. It feels like we're separated from everybody, and so sometimes we can feel very alone in it. So the things we're going to talk about tonight are what anxiety is, how it shows up in the mind and body, the common triggers and early warning signs, tools that we can have at our fingertips to help calm the nervous system and ease tension. A link between anxiety, trauma and emotional safety. We're going to talk a little bit about mindfulness and small daily habits that make a difference. A little bit about how we can support loved ones that have anxiety, and what we might be able to do to build some resilience and long-term emotional balance. So we've got a lot to get through, so I'll get started, and I'm hoping that whoever's logging on tonight is taking a moment to just review how they are today, how they're feeling right now. So what sets the feelings of anxiety apart from a regular experience of emotions is that anxiety occurs out of all proportion to the external factors around the person. So they can even occur suddenly with no explanation or trigger, and that wouldn't be when we'd say we're having an anxiety attack. For those of us that have experienced anxiety, the intensity of feelings can be overwhelming and difficult, and you can feel like if you're in the middle of a panic attack that you can't breathe and you're going to die. So there's significant distress related to this, and can be a lot of difficulty just carrying out daily tasks, and can put us off our regular eating or sleeping patterns. It can manifest physically. It manifests as palpitations, trembling, nausea, fatigue, sweating, chest tightness. I mean, I'm sure we all know somebody who's been raced to hospital with a suspected heart attack only to find that it was an anxiety attack. They have tightness of breath and shortness of breath, and they may also experience periods of hypervigilance, irritability, restlessness and intrusive thoughts. That's often what clients will come in and say to me. You know, I've got a lot of intrusive thoughts going on. So about 1 in 10 Australians report anxiety-related experiences, and that's a pretty high strike rate when you think about it. Now, some people will find that they'll have a sense of this heightened fear, which is what anxiety is, and those experiences of anxiety are transient and they disappear after a few days. For many of us, however, the distress of anxiety does not disappear on its own, and the persistence can be persistent and overwhelming. And what they do is deeply impact how we live our lives and how we connect to other people in the world. So it's important to understand firstly that there are different forms of treatable anxiety disorders. There's general anxiety disorder, social anxiety disorder, and panic disorder. That's the one that I would call panic attacks. They form anxiety which can be triggered by substances including alcohol and marijuana, drugs of course, and it can often be accompanied by other mental health or addiction issues. So we talk about dual diagnosis a lot in South Pacific. Now it won't be at all surprising to any of you that many people come into South Pacific. They want to admit because they're having anxiety and it's become overwhelming, and they will experience disproportionate feelings of anxiety and stress for more than a few weeks, or they've been struggling it on and off for quite a while. And I would suggest to you, if you're not sure, we have on our website, on our South Pacific private website at southpacific.com.au, a self-assessment tool. So you can actually answer a few questions, not a lot. It's not a diagnostic tool, but it gives you an idea if you need to reach out and get professional help. And whether you do or you don't, you can have a free, confidential, professional phone assessment with our team 7 days a week. Reaching out's the first step. But let's make the assumption that many people that are listening today believe they do have anxiety. And you know, I've talked about the feelings. There's this the feelings are excessive fear, restlessness and tense. They're wound up and tight. The thoughts are worrying, obsessive thinking and catastrophizing. It's like even if nothing is really going on, they'll make it the worst possible case scenario. And the physical symptoms I've talked about, the tightening of the chest, quick breathing, difficulty sleeping, headaches. And I think you're very aware when you have anxiety of the physical symptoms, and that's one thing. But I actually believe that in some respects the mental overthinking really is the hardest part to live with, because you get no peace. You can't sleep properly. Now, when we're talking about this at South Pacific, we're talking about it. It doesn't come in isolation. So I want to there's a connection between anxiety and childhood trauma or trauma in your life, and just the everyday events that are happening in the world right now. And there's plenty to be concerned about, and we know that. So it shows up physically, it shows up in your emotions, and it shows up in your mental state. I believe when we're talking about where it comes from, I believe it comes often from our history. And when I'm working with clients, if I have a client who walks in here and sits down and what are we talking about? Oh, I'm really anxious, and they'll be all over the place. Now the first question I will say to them is, what is anxiety like for you? Because I know what it can be like for me, but it may present differently for you. And I want to be able to work with you. When we're working at South Pacific, we're often taking into account the history of where the person's come from, the presenting problems that are obvious, and the disconnect between their history, where they are, and where they'd like to be in their lives. My belief is that a lot of it comes from our childhood. A lot of it comes from either being enmeshed and parentified by a family member, usually not always mum, but often, such that we feel very disempowered in our world and we don't trust our own inner knowing. If we've been raised in a family where we've had a lot of people, we've had a parent telling us all the time where we're going wrong, what we're doing wrong, what we're not doing right, whatever it is, we will grow up in a family system where we believe that we're not good enough, we don't matter, we don't count, we're not important, we're inadequate, whatever it is. The core beliefs. and there's a list of them. I've just mentioned a few there. We will actually not trust our own inner knowing. And then we'll move into a situation where we're actually always trying to look to the other, whoever that is, a partner, a friend, colleagues we work with, whatever. We'll be always looking to them to get them to assure us that what we're doing in our lives is the right course of action. And that's very disempowering for the person involved. So if we grow up in a space where we're not valued in our family, this is the Pia Melody model, many of you, the model of developmental immaturity, many of you are very familiar with it. We grow up where we're not valued, we don't learn healthy self-esteem, we'll sit in less than or better than in terms of our self-esteem. We grow up in a family system where we're not allowed to be appropriately vulnerable, and I'm talking age appropriately vulnerable. We will not learn boundaries, and that is external boundaries and internal boundaries. We will sit in a place of being too vulnerable or invulnerable. That is, we've got no boundaries or we've got walls. We can often actually flip-flop between the two, so we can have fragmented boundaries. I mean, Pia calls them partial boundaries. I call them fragmented ones, because I think we can have functional boundaries at work and with our colleagues, and then go home and we've got none with our partner. If we don't grow up in a space where we're allowed to be imperfect, because we are all perfectly imperfect, we will not learn reality. And reality's in those four areas: the body, our physical body, thinking, feelings and behaviour. So if we don't sit in functionality around those and reality around those, we will sit in bad rebellious or good perfect. Now, these are ways that I believe that as children, this is where we flip-flop. And then as we grow up into teen years and adult years, we actually do flip-flop between the two. If we're not allowed to be appropriately dependent, we will not have healthy dependency on anybody. Because let's face it, we're a pack animal, and we need to be able to be interdependent on each other, because we are living in community. And so if we don't learn healthy dependency, we will be either too dependent or anti-dependent. That is, I'm too dependent on, I'm looking for you for everything, or I've got no needs, no wants. I'm anti-dependent. If I don't sit in a space in my family system where I can be spontaneous and open, I will not learn moderation. That was the one word on the model I didn't like. And we will sit in out of control or controlling. So we flip-flop between that sense of being wounded all the time, and that's what trauma means. When we look at the word trauma, it's from a Greek word which means wound, which is what we're talking about. We as therapists throw the word trauma around a lot, but we're really talking about wounds. And sometimes, for many people who come into South Pacific with anxiety and depression, usually they're often hand in hand, but let's say just with anxiety, they will often think they have no real childhood trauma or no real trauma in their history. And what they don't understand, that even not being supported and nurtured in a functional way is traumatic for a child. If somebody's really abusing us, if a parent or an older brother or bullies at school or whatever it is are really abusing us, we can name that overtly as traumatic and abusive. But oftentimes when we're living in a family system where there isn't the love, there isn't the sort of positive regard, there isn't the support, we don't see that as abusive. We just think, oh, well, Dad was busy and Mum had another 4 kids and, I know I was loved. Well, do you? And when I often say to clients, so were you told you were loved as a child? Now, I can't tell you how many times I've heard the word no to that answer. Okay, did you get hugs? No. Or on the odd occasion. Now, this is never to blame the parent. This is just to get clear about what you now today in your life are dealing with and where it may have come from. So when we're talking about how does it show up, it shows up physically, it shows up in your thinking and the overthinking, and it shows up emotionally. Where does it come from? I believe it comes from the history that we come from. And certainly there can be assistance with, antidepressant medication. Our psychiatrists certainly assess people for that, and that can be helpful. But it would be also very helpful if you were suffering with this and struggling with it, if you took some time to even consider coming into South Pacific and doing some work around what's brought you to this point. Where do I sit with this? I mentioned earlier the self-assessment that you can do online. I've also mentioned that you can reach out on the 1-800 number, which is 1-800-063-332. They take calls at 8:30 in the morning, and I think if you ring that number you can probably even leave your name and number and they'll come back to you. And they're very skilled. Our intake team are very skilled, and they can talk about what's happening in your life today and what's brought you to where you are. I wanted to just talk a little bit about the thinking part of this, because it can get, when we're in the rumination, overthinking, and I just think sometimes to break down how our thinking patterns keep us sort of stuck, really, in this space. So, for example, one of them might be black and white thinking. So in terms of, it's either all or nothing, one extreme or the other. It's a situation where I don't see any shade of grey in the middle of anything. It's either right or wrong, good or bad, black or white. So, for example, if my performance isn't as good as I think it should be, because I'm a perfectionist, let's say, I see myself as a failure. And then I'm going to beat myself up about that. The second option I'd like you to think about is how often you should yourself. Living by shoulds or musts or ought to, and it often leads to disappointment and guilt when you perceive that you fail. And feeling angry with others who do not live by your shoulds, so you become very harsh and judgmental. So, for example, it may be that you think something like a good partner should never get angry. A good employee should always be on time, get everything done when they say they're going to. And, we are, as a species, perfectly imperfect. We're going to make mistakes all the time. And I often say to clients, 99.9% of the mistakes you make, you are not, they're not life-threatening. You make a mistake, it's like, oh, that didn't work. Okay, I'll make a decision and try it again. If we're living with that terrible sense of humiliation and shame because we make a mistake, that's extreme, that's toxic. That's in that space of worthlessness, and that's old. I'm going to suggest to you that is old. So we might have, another one might be selective negative thinking. So it's like the glass is half empty, it's never half full. So we focus on negative details of a situation rather than looking at the whole picture. We dwell on the unpleasant things that have occurred and we dismiss the good things. So this would fall into the category, for example, where you compare yourself to other people who are richer, better looking, have a better job, whatever. Have a partner you don't, whatever it is. And so there's often the sting in the tail of this one is that you'll live with a sense of unfairness. It's not fair. Yeah, well, as far as I can tell life isn't a lot of the time. You might disqualify the positive. That will be another one. So you never give yourself credit where it's due, and you reject positive experiences. It's like they don't count for some reason. If you have a positive experience or you contributed something positively, you don't allow yourself to give yourself a pat on the back for that. This is particularly when people give you compliments, for example. Great job you did, or thank you for looking after the family, or thank you for doing that. And you will just dismiss the achievement by saying something like, well, anybody else would have done the same thing. Rather than letting in the compliment. Overgeneralising, it's like it's always a disaster, that sort of thing. Label calling, label naming, another extreme form of overgeneralisation. Instead of describing the error, you attach the whole thing as negative about you. So you make a mistake at work or at home and you go, I'm stupid. Well, hang on. Catastrophising, we make mountains out of molehills. Fortune telling, that's a good one. Fortune telling is, I can predict what's going to happen, it's all going to be negative, let's not even start. Mind reading, this is classic. People that are empathetic will tell me this all the time. They mind read. It's thinking someone is reacting negatively without asking them. You make up a story. Oh, they don't like me. Or they didn't invite me because they don't want me to be part of the team, whatever. Rather than saying, I'm curious, I wasn't invited. Sometimes we just need to ask the question. We personalise people's behaviour. Now, I've got to tell you this because I was working with someone today. We were talking about personalising people's behaviour. So we take responsibility and blame for anything that's unpleasant. Even if it's not particularly unpleasant, we'll make it unpleasant in our head. We believe that everything is done as a consequence to me. It's about me. And so when I personalise other people's behaviour without checking out with them whether that's in fact real, I always put myself in a less than position. Always. And I've got to tell you, when I stop personalising other people's behaviour, and if someone did something and I thought, well, that's curious they did that, wonder why they did that, and I will ask, I'm curious why you did that, I'm curious why I wasn't invited, I'm curious whatever it is. Can we do it differently? 99% of the time they say, yes, they're not even aware that I've personalised their behaviour. So I've made their behaviour about me. And I mistake feelings for facts. So believing that something's true because I feel it to be true. Again, I feel scared, so the situation's dangerous. I feel hopeless, the situation's hopeless, rather than checking it out. Now, all of these things add to anxiety, and all of them put us in a position where we're on the defensive and on the back foot all the time. And I would make a suggestion to you that if you struggle with anxiety, that you have a think about how long have you struggled with it. Do you want to continue to be trapped in the vortex of anxiety and probably depression, because they do go hand in hand? And if you don't want to be, then I would be suggesting you reach out for professional help. South Pacific's available. There's plenty of therapists available that can help you as well. And you can take time to really unpack this. There is a way through the middle. You do not have to do it by yourself, and nothing that you say is going to be a shock. We're quite used to dealing with people who have struggled with mental health. I've seen many people go into South Pacific, and I've seen them come out and really shift their lives around. The anxiety could be a mood disorder. It could also be related to the alcohol and drugs that they're using. It could be a result of PTSD or complex PTSD, and people are very skilled at South Pacific in dealing with this. So I'm just going to, I want to thank you for logging on tonight. I do think that it's good for you to actually be able to reach out if you need support. Please don't suffer on your own, because you don't have to. I think also when we're in this vortex of anxiety, we think, I should be able to think my way out of it. I should be able to work my own way out of it. I can't tell anybody that I'm frightened. Fear in and of itself is a functional emotion. It's designed to keep us safe. It's when it goes to the toxic level of panic and terror, which is what we're talking about when we're talking about anxiety, that we know that it's historical and that we need to get help from it. Interestingly enough, the gift of fear is wisdom. So have a think about that. When I would run changes, I used to finish up this, and I don't say this to be in any way triggering for anybody, but I do think that there is a point where we have to reach out ourselves, and what I want to say to you is this one. This is what I used to say when we'd complete the 5 days of changes. No one is coming to save you, to give you permission to choose you or to validate you. This has always been your job. You must love yourself so fiercely and fully that you have no other choice but to be strong for yourself, to fight for yourself, to be yourself, and to build yourself. You do not have to do it alone. You can do it with help, professional help. People are very willing to be there and be of service to you. So thank you, Heinz and Kath and Linky. That's very good of you to jump on and leave a comment. And I do know that we all walk into freedom together, and many of us who've been on the road to recovery for quite a long time do it with a joyful heart and the lightness of spirit that none of us thought that we'd ever be able to do. So I'm going to sign off now from South Pacific. Thank you for listening tonight, and if you feel like you need help, please reach out, because we're here. Thank you.